Baldoni parties are essentially saying, or the Wayfarer parties are now saying, or what they're tipping us off on, is they are preparing a further or future motion related to these communications, where I think that they're probably going to come after them for abusive process or some other remedy, like making those communications inadmissible at trial or something to that effect. Worst case scenario for them, for the Lively parties.
That's, I guess, has Freedman, I guess that's where I'm lost. Has Freedman taken that next step? Where are we currently in the case, and what needs to happen for this to be even more carefully looked?
Blake Lively's legal battle has taken a shocking turn that could unravel her entire case. The sudden dismissal of Jed Wallace raises major questions. Why did the judge remove him, and could this decision expose flaws in her allegedly questionable evidence? This twist might reveal deeper cracks in Lively's legal strategy and reshape everything about her future in court.
In street relations, they were the ones who sort of were accused of doing the dirty deeds of the retaliation campaign, the untraceable acts across Reddit and so on. He denies this. He says none of that happened. We'll go through what he says in a second. But Blake was accusing him of being hired by Tag PR, etc., to do a lot of the dirty retaliation tactics that she's saying was all their fault and nothing was her fault.
The judge's decision to dismiss Jed Wallace from Blake. Lively's lawsuit might seem like a minor technicality, but in reality, it carries far greater implications for her entire legal strategy. Citing venue issues, the court ruled that the alleged actions involving Wallace took place in Texas, not New York, where the lawsuit was originally filed. Consequently, Wallace was removed from the case, though Lively was granted permission to refile her claims in a more appropriate jurisdiction. At first glance, this may appear to be just a procedural hiccup for Lively's legal team. But upon closer examination, it reveals deeper cracks that could ultimately weaken the foundation of her case. The dismissal was granted without prejudice, meaning Lively still retains the right to pursue these accusations again. However, that technical allowance is far from a victory. When examining the details of the ruling, it becomes evident that the structural integrity of her case is far less stable than it initially appeared. One striking revelation from the court summary is that all evidence related to these particular claims has already been submitted, raising a critical question: what additional proof can Lively realistically present if she decides to refile? This acknowledgement casts serious doubt on how viable her renewed case could be, especially considering how narrowly the judge outlined what she is permitted to amend. The court's instructions make it clear that Lively can only revise her existing claims against Wallace, with no opportunity to introduce new allegations or supplementary accusations. An explicit limitation that considerably restricts her legal flexibility. This constraint not only boxes her strategy, but also risks making any refiled complaint feel redundant or diluted. To make matters worse, the judge's note that all available evidence has already been leveraged suggests that Lively's legal arsenal might be running dry. Instead of strengthening her position, this development exposes how fragile her case may truly be. For someone attempting to prove a complex set of allegations, this ruling represents more than a procedural setback. It's a clear warning sign flashing in plain sight. Yet, what truly fuels contention around this decision is the comparison to another key figure in the ongoing saga, Justin Baldoni. Observers have noted that Baldoni was not granted the same procedural leniency that Lively received. His team reportedly faced tighter restrictions and less time to fully respond to accusations or gather additional evidence, a disparity that has raised eyebrows among legal watchers and fans following the case. One frustrated observer remarked, "I'm just frustrated because he should have given that same luxury to Justin. Justin needs discovery to find a lot of this evidence." This perceived inconsistency underscores a broader question about fairness and judicial balance in the court's handling of these intertwined cases. Why does it appear that Lively's team was given opportunities that Baldoni's was denied? And if Lively's evidence has already been fully presented, is her case now running on fumes? These unresolved questions complicate what initially looked like a simple venue dispute. In reality, the dismissal of Wallace and the procedural contrast with Baldoni expose a far more tangled and uneven legal battlefield, one that could shape the next chapter of this high-profile courtroom drama.
Overarching issue that Judge Lyman is inevitably going to have to figure out is he understands the relevance of why they're asking for what they're asking for. He compelled these communications from Van Zandt because he says that it's relevant to whether or not you fraudulently obtained this evidence, point blank, and you can't argue otherwise. And then he made some other rulings, but he said that, look, they've made an argument that you fraudulently concealed something and tried to launder evidence and use it for gain in this lawsuit, and so therefore it's relevant. We're compelling it. Now, what the Baldoni parties are essentially saying, or the Wayfarer parties are now saying, or what they're tipping us off on, is they are preparing a further or future motion related to these communications, where I think that they're probably going to come after them for abusive process or some other remedy, like making those communications inadmissible at trial or something to that effect. Worst case scenario for them, for the Lively parties, it's going to be an abusive process cause of action, an independent cause of action. But that's what Freedman is going to have to decide. If he just lets it go and he doesn't penalize the Lively parties at all for anything that's gone down, it's going to set a wild precedent in the Second Circuit about how you can maneuver in the court system to obtain evidence in these various shady ways. Oh yeah, just file a lawsuit. You don't have to name anybody. You don't have to notify anybody, and then you'll get whatever.
Blake. Lively's entire case now appears to hinge on one explosive allegation, that she somehow obtained private text messages from Stephanie Jones's phone. At first glance, it might seem like just another critical piece of evidence, but a closer look at how those texts were allegedly acquired turns the story in a far darker direction. Reports suggest that Lively's legal team may have used highly questionable methods to access the messages, sparking serious legal and ethical concerns within both the court and the public. Insiders are now openly asking whether Lively's team crossed a line to strengthen their case, and if so, whether this evidence could even be deemed admissible in court. The text messages are said to be a central pillar of Lively's allegations, and according to one insider, they represent a very important piece of the puzzle. Without them, her case would reportedly lose significant weight. However, it's the mystery surrounding how these texts were obtained that has thrown everything into chaos. Some sources have gone as far as to claim that the messages were retrieved using a fake subpoena, or even more shockingly, through a shell corporation. If true, such tactics would not only be controversial, but potentially illegal, casting a shadow over the integrity of Lively's legal team and their overall strategy. Popcorn Planet captured the public's sentiment bluntly when they stated, "I don't understand how they got them through a fake subpoena through a shell corporation. It's shady as f," summing up the disbelief and outrage circulating among followers of the trial. The implications are difficult to ignore. If the texts were indeed obtained without proper authorization, Lively could face repercussions far beyond the loss of this evidence's admissibility. It could severely damage the credibility of her entire case and tarnish her public reputation. The court itself is also placed in a precarious position, admitting illegally obtained evidence would compromise the integrity of the judicial process and potentially hand her opponents a powerful ethical counter-argument. Even if the messages contain explosive revelations, their possible exclusion could weaken her claims to the point of irrelevance. For Lively, this isn't just a setback, it's a potential catastrophe. The lingering questions now loom large. How exactly were those texts obtained? If any violation occurred, who authorized it? And most crucially, was the evidence so vital to Lively's argument that her team was willing to take a major ethical gamble to secure it? Adding another layer of complexity, Justin Baldoni's ongoing battle over discovery requests presents a troubling contrast. While Lively's team is accused of overstepping legal boundaries to obtain evidence, Baldoni has reportedly struggled just to gain access to key materials that could support his defense. The disparity between their situations is striking and has begun reshaping public perception of the entire case. As the legal drama unfolds, this widening gap between questionable aggression and procedural restraint could define not only the outcome in court, but also how each figure is remembered in the court of public opinion.
Really believe all that? I'll be honest, I don't. This idea that he wasn't out there creating ghost accounts to sort of try to amplify other organic real posts seems silly to me. I understand why they're trying to sort of avoid admitting that, because that's where this whole thing comes about. But for me personally, the definition of retaliation and smear campaign would be putting stuff that's not true, would be trying to, create negative narratives that aren't realistic. And I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that when I was reporting. So I like, it's hard for me to believe he did nothing. That's what he's saying. I don't know. What do you guys think? But even if he had done some of the little stuff, it could have never snowballed into what it did without organic, genuine people reacting to Blake's real statements, her real actions. So this idea that they orchestrated it, the idea that Jed Wallace or Melissa Nathan or any of them forced me to do what I'm doing, or countless others over the summer to report on her ridiculous marketing choices, her bad attitude and junkets, her avoidance of DV, where it's like, girl, this is what the movie's about. I understand maybe you're trying to make it seem a little bit more Barbie for the sake of making it successful, but you got to know the tone and you got to know your time and place. And she just didn't throughout that whole marketing campaign. And beyond that, she was marketing her own companies. How does that help the film? It only helps her. So all of that was tone deaf. It was wrong. And you can't blame Jed Wallace.
Watching with Justin. Baldoni's growing frustration with how this legal saga is unfolding is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. And for good reason. While Blake Lively has been granted the opportunity to refile her claims and even amend her complaint, Baldoni has not received the same treatment. This uneven application of discovery rights, the crucial pretrial process where both parties exchange evidence and key information, has created a noticeable imbalance that many see as a sign of favoritism within the legal system. Baldoni's claims of unequal treatment go beyond personal grievance. They ignite a broader discussion about fairness and consistency in high-stakes legal battles. What stings most for Baldoni is the apparent contradiction in the court's handling of these cases. Despite the judge acknowledging that all evidence requested by Lively had already been provided, she was still granted permission to amend her complaint, a luxury Baldoni has not enjoyed. In contrast, he has reportedly struggled to access critical materials essential to building his defense. Andy Signor of Popcorn Planet captured the frustration perfectly, saying, "I'm struggling with whether that's really fair or not. I mean, I guess it is. I'm just frustrated because he should have given that same luxury to Justin, because I do feel like Justin needs discovery to find a lot of this evidence and have his day in court to prove it, just as Blake does." That statement captures the heart of the controversy. While Lively's case continues to evolve and adapt, Baldoni seems trapped in procedural limitations that have left him with fewer options and less room to maneuver. Adding to his challenges, Baldoni has spoken openly about his limited time to respond to the allegations against him, many of which were amplified in the media long before he had a chance to defend himself. The court's restrictions on his discovery rights only make matters worse, leaving him at a disadvantage in preparing his case and countering damaging narratives. Meanwhile, Lively's ability to move forward seemingly unimpeded has created a stark and uncomfortable contrast that's difficult to overlook. Some argue this disparity may simply be a product of differing procedural circumstances, but others suspect there could be underlying strategies at play that subtly tilt the balance of justice.
Has Freedman, I guess that's where I'm lost, has Freedman taken that next step? Where are we currently in the case, and what needs to happen for this to be even more carefully looked at?
Well, I think that he needs to get the communications first. I don't know if he's received them yet or not. I know they've been compelled. Once he have those...
Right, that was a win for Team Judge, right? The judge did reveal, yes, you must give this information over.
Yes, there's no argument that you could withhold him. And so, yes, he's got that information. The next step is to figure out what specific communications were obtained via that subpoena. Step 2 is run an analysis of whether or not any of those were illegally obtained. How deep into her personal communications did they go, and at how many hoops did they have to jump through to get to her personal stuff on a business phone? That, you know, they're arguing, well, if it was on a business phone, then we're entitled to see it because it's a business phone. That's going to be another argument. And then 3, they're going to have to figure out how to frame their next motion. Is this going to be basically an amended complaint based on abuse of process, or are they just going to make this an evidentiary motion, meaning whatever communications obtained through the subpoena, they want to be made inadmissible? And so they're framing all of that right now, and where that's inevitably going to lead is a future motion. When is it going to happen? Probably within the next month or two, I would